Welcome back to Fite Sports Uncovered. I'm your host, Mark Chubert, and today's show, we're focusing on that guy. Yeah, that guy. And for many in the Fite Sports media business, you would know him as the friendly face to probably most of the EFC events that you ever attended. My guest today, Guy Lazarus. Guy, thanks so much and welcome to Fite Sports Uncovered.
Thank you, Mark. Great pleasure to be here.
Well, to be here, yeah, this is your new home away from home, the blue mats of Quan Vessels, the old Fite militia here in Sunny Hill. So just the whole Fite Sports sort of space for you, this has almost been like a lifelong journey, has it not? I mean, it started out in the Western Cape. You started studying a sports management degree. Did you think back then that you were going to end up at this juncture in your life just surrounded by combat sports?
Yes and no. This definitely, we didn't think I'd be in Joburg. But there was definitely a direction towards martial arts from the onset. I mean, before even studying sports as a business, I was doing judo and I was working in the gym, at one of the gyms already, you know. And then I started doing a BCom, but then I was like, this is not for me. It's not fitting well. Figured out there was such a thing as sports management, so it's more industry specific for myself, and then followed that path and just kept falling into something within the combat sports industry or martial arts industry.
I mean, you look at that journey. While you were studying, you found yourself at Dragon Power, at the time arguably one of the biggest gyms in the Western Cape. Fantastic sort of heritage around it, especially if we look build up to 2015, that EFC 42 event, the title fight, Norman Vessels versus champion Dolce for the light heavyweight title. It was Norman Vessels defending that for the first time. So much intensity at that weigh-in, so much intensity in that fight. The fight delivered, but at the time that was positioned from a media point of view, that was the big rivalry in combat sports, particularly in MMA here in South Africa.
Yes, I mean, specifically that bout, it was a big one. So I mean, if you look at the match and the hype of the build-up from the EFC countdowns and that, I rewatch it every now and then because it just keeps getting served to me because of Google, you know. Yeah. Like the hype wasn't so much as built around Dolce versus Chef Norman Vessels. It was kind of about gym versus gym, or that coach versus this coach, which is a very different angle for a fight, especially of that magnitude, but it seemed to work. What was the other part of the question?
Well, the other part of the question is just in terms of the intensity that it delivered to the combat sports community, is that it just seemed to fire everyone's imagination simply because, you know, you've got, like you said, coach versus coach, gym versus gym. Ultimately, the poster child of it was, or the poster of it all was, Norman versus champion.
Yeah, and at the time, I mean, Dolce was an enigma, if I'm using the word correctly in the context, you know. Not much was known about him other than he was like this beast of an athlete with some amazing judo. And then you had Chef, who was at the time a very intense and scary human being.
Absolutely.
Like, I'd just started training here because I just moved up to Joburg. I was just part of the casual class, but like I didn't want to go near Chef. He was a very intense human being, very focused, singularly focused on everything. And I mean, you look back on those interviews and you're like, he might have been a serial killer. He's a lot nicer and softer now.
Yeah, absolutely.
But you know, he was focused on the fight, and I think those polarizing sides is what built that hype so much. There were so many characters in that, you know, from Quentin, Dolce, you got Richie, Chef. You've got both have incredibly strong followings in their native areas. It just really built this really big and intense rivalry, as you said. That was possibly the most intense face-off of all time. You know, Dolce, you know, he wanted to represent his religious beliefs and his people. So
and the DRC.
Yeah, and the DRC and all of that. And he came in and the whole of Grand West was pumping. And then he's got that lantern that he held up.
Correct.
And I don't know the religious aspects to it, so I don't want to put out any thoughts on it. And then Chef's just like, no.
Slapped it down.
And that set everyone off. Like, it was, kept on, had this feeling of there's an inner city rivalry, kind of like what Derby Day would be in Soweto between Kaizer Chiefs and Orlando.
Correct.
It was that.
And I mean, ultimately, fantastic build-up, fantastic fight. I mean, that second round win, Chef retaining the title, would ultimately prove to be Chef's final fight, final MMA bout for EFC, final professional fight for his career. But that time sort of very much introduced you to the Muay Thai aspects. You've grown with that. You're now very much focused around the jiu-jitsu side of combat sports. But it wasn't always that, because you've got a bit of an amateur record yourself when it comes to MMA.
Yes. Okay, let me start at the beginning of my martial arts journey. So as I mentioned a little bit earlier, I started judo from the age of, must have been 6 or 7.
Yeah.
What age do your kids start school?
Yes.
I was very fortunate. I had Max Gruno judo at my school, and eventually I got into it because everybody wants to be a ninja when Three Ninjas Kick Back was, you know, the movie, and Ninja Turtles was the movies on TV. And I progressed. I got my provincial colors several times, which I was, you know, medaled, got all these team medals, etc. And then, you know, family stuff, moved overseas, came back, and don't even know why I never got back into judo, but a bunch of my kids at school were at this place called Dragon Power doing Muay Thai, and I'm like, you know what, let's try this. 10 years later, there I am, I'm fighting, I'm humbled in saying this, but like representing the country, team captain at 1 or 2 of the world champs, helping coach other guys, eventually, and then left there. That was up until, what, like 2011, 2012, somewhere around there. Left there, moved to PFA, started doing MMA, and then got to the point, as you said, had an amateur fight. I fought former UFC flyweight champion, bantamweight champion, Lutando Rico.
Yep. And he's now fighting for the flyweight.
Yeah, that was both of our first MMA, my only MMA fight, but both of our first MMA fights.
And I mean, that experience on its own, I mean, you having been there for his first, now, a couple of weeks from now, he's fighting for the flyweight title. I mean, to have watched him develop like that, I mean, that must surely bring some fantastic memories to you in terms of watching his career flourish.
100%. I mean, Lutando, especially in that situation, because I have shared the arena with him, but guys like Don, having watched them grow up, Temba. I remember I was running like a little blog, and I've known Temba Dragon Power days, and he was fighting like my friends, and how he struggled as an amateur and then built his way up to where he is now. Like watching all these guys fight against adversity, fight through the odds, just keep grinding away day after day, year after year to chase their dreams and goals. And now you look at guys like Lutando's fighting for the title. He's fighting in Japan as well every now and then. Yeah. You know, Temba's the champ. Temba runs a successful business around the corner. I think he's launching like a cleaning business as well. I remember him talking about it at some point. Watching these guys grow, watching Don go from, I remember him walking to the gym with me, and he was like 16, I think, to beating me up like a couple months later, to fighting in the UFC, and now he's a proud dad, I think. He is a proud dad. It warms me with like sentimentality, like just having played a tiny little part in their growth, helping them grow themselves from a marketing perspective at least, and then Lutando actually fighting him perspective, yeah.
Well, there you've heard just a little bit of what Guy Lazarus has gone through just to get to where he is now. Yes, he was, for me and for many like me, the face of EFC for many, many, many years. But he's got a storied martial arts career. We're going to dive a little bit more into that when we come back. Don't go away.
Here we go! Recently insert that is on the netted guns. Dominic, no touch. Oh, Holly Holm. Look at the ring. The big dog. Spear.
Sports Uncovered. I'm your host, Mark Joubert, and we're here. If you missed the first couple of minutes, we're here in Sunning Hill, Johannesburg. We're chatting to Guy Lazarus. As I mentioned earlier, he is and was for many, many years the man that us as media would have to speak to every time we wanted to speak to anybody or even get invited to the EFC. And he's moved on to other things, and we're going to find a little bit more out about that shortly. But from judo as a young man, Muay Thai, very short amateur MMA career, and now he's really, really sort of perfecting the art of Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. And Guy, talking about your move from judo to Muay Thai into the MMA sort of field, Jiu-Jitsu out of MMA has grown as a martial art discipline that is really taking over the world, particularly those that are in the know when it comes to the combat sports world. You are a purple belt,
Yes.
Jiu-Jitsu practitioner. That journey that you've gone through in terms of jits, I mean, to get to purple belt, this is not a 5-minute exercise. This is years and years of dedication and getting those ears squashed and arms bent and legs turned. I mean, tell us a bit more about that.
Wow. So I mean, as I said, I already did judo from a baby age. So I had a minor fundamental understanding of grappling as a whole before I started, and I was learning jits because I was like, hey, let me do some MMA. I like fighting. I like hitting people. I like getting hit. And then over the passage of time, I developed a preferred interest in jiu-jitsu, partly because I'm also aware that I'm getting older, and it's more sustainable for my own physical health than getting hit in the head. You know?
Yeah, absolutely, for all of us.
Yeah. The live puzzle solving, to quote Joe Rogan, it's human puzzle chess with dire consequences. If you lose, you essentially die because you got choked unconscious.
Yeah.
Obviously, in a safer
environment, yeah.
Safe environment. So I actually started, I would say, jiu-jitsu in any context was when Ron Potts first came to the country.
Okay.
He walked into Dragon Power and started up the MMA program there. So I was doing a little bit of grappling here and there. I was still very Muay Thai focused. I was intrigued because I used to do judo, I can do this. Obviously not. Then I moved to PFA. Jiu-Jitsu became a much bigger focus. I took a large interest in it. Eventually got a gi. It wasn't just for MMA. It was I actually want to compete in Jiu-Jitsu and do those things as well. Then I got the job with EFC, and it's listen, I can't actually fight MMA anymore. That would be a weird bias thing. I'm sure someone would have an issue with it. So I was like, you know what? I'm okay with not getting hit in the face anymore. It's been 10, 15 years. I don't have to do this. I've got a functional, sustainable career that I can focus on. But I still want to be involved in martial arts. It's been my life, literally my whole life. So I've just been focusing more and more deeply on jits and getting more and more involved and competing as much as I can. The last couple of years started coaching a lot, helping around with the kids programs here at FFM at Quan Vessels Academy, and it's just growing and growing from there.
I mean, you've represented the country around the world at JITS competitions. I mean, 2018, 2019, Abu Dhabi Pro.
Yes.
Great experiences for you, just in terms of being able to bring that back for the youngsters here.
Yes. I'm aware of my privilege. I happened to have enough money at the time, and I was like, you know what? This is the time I'm going. I just got my blue belt. Obviously, I'm very naive and I've got a chance. I think I was 30 at the time already, or 31. So I was already technically a master, so I shouldn't even be in the adult division, but I was I'm doing this regardless. And I went and, I lost my first fight to the Brazilian that came fourth, but it was overall just a great experience to see how big it is, how it's run, meet a lot of my jiu-jitsu heroes or martial arts heroes. From everyone from Mackenzie Dern, I did a little seminar with her, and Shandy Ribeiro, to Edwin Najmi, and all you name the big names and they were there. It was just this, I wouldn't say life-changing experience, but something I'm never going to forget. And especially that Martino Silva from Cape Town was a guy I'd known from years from Dragon Power. He went and won Purple Belt Masters, and he's probably the first person in this new generation of South African Jiu-Jitsu athletes to go and actually win a gold medal at World Champs. So it was witnessing that historic event as well just really added to it.
So you've led, like you say, a very privileged martial arts life from the perspective that you've seen some crazy stuff take place at EFC. You've been and represented the country. You've been to top level events around the world. You've watched some of the top athletes progress from literally being a nobody to now representing themselves and the country on bigger stages. Yeah, we're talking the UFC and the likes. And yet you've kept it very grounded, because out of all of that has come for you probably a very special moment, G Exchange. Talk to me about that.
Cool, yeah. So, I mean, I wasn't rich growing up. I just somehow grafted and got sponsorships to go do all these trips. But one of the biggest barriers to entry I always noticed with jiu-jitsu, and it was a problem for me because I was a student without much income, was how expensive gis are to get into jiu-jitsu. I mean, you need to pay your gym fees, but then you still need to spend like $1.5 to $2 grand on a gi. It's not quite golf, but it's not too far off.
Yeah.
So, and also, you know, I've got a lot of people around me that are very like environmentally conscious and all of this. And eventually it just clicked. I'm like, a lot of people don't finish off the use of their gi. They're like, use it for a year, and they're like, okay, I don't do the sport anymore. And it sits in the back of the cupboard, and they either give it to Red Cross or sell it or throw it away. I'm like, why don't I create a platform for people to at least get back some of their money, make it cheaper for people looking to get into the sport, you know, or at least test the waters, because maybe you don't want to spend 2,000-3,000 rand on a brand new gi. You just want to like dip your toes and see, do I like it? So let me try secondhand gi. And then probably the biggest thing, I didn't even really think about it until my sister made a post about it, was like the whole recycling aspect of it. You know, it takes like 20 liters to make a general cotton t-shirt. How much water does it take to make a 550 GSM gi? So, yeah.
Absolutely. And how has it been accepted by the community?
I mean, look, I haven't seen anything negative.
But a lot of positivity.
But a lot of positivity. So I don't want to say there's no negative, so I don't know if there is. I hope there isn't. But from what I've seen, everyone's been very welcoming and appreciative. You know, like I messaged one of the other gym owners. I know he's got a lot of kids that probably need gis. I just happened to come into a whole bunch of like plain gis. I'm like, but if you need, I can help you out. You know, I can't like give it to you because I need to pay the supplier, but I can get you really good price.
So from kids gis right the way up to grandmaster, senior gis available. And where can people find a little bit more out about the Gi Exchange?
So at the moment, mostly just my Instagram, the Gi Exchange. I'm literally in the process of building the platform itself, which will be like a great buy to seller marketplace, much the same as Airbnb works in a similar process, with all the all the financials and all of that in check and keeping everything safe and all of that. And then also you can go to guijitsu.com at the moment, but it's literally just a page on there.
Okay.
Yeah.
Big move for you was your last event at EFC was EFC 85. That was the first event coming out of the pandemic. Kind of a strange time to sort of walk away from something, having sat out for most part of 440 days without having an event. But you've now transitioned wholly here to Wessels Kwan Academy, where your focus is on the kids, training kids. But there's something a little bit more special about what's going on at the moment here. Is there's a big initiative, one of many, around sort of improving or counteracting the scourge of gender-based violence.
Yes, so we are working with an agency called Africa Tikkun. They've been around for many years, so they're quite on the grassroots level. And we said to them, listen, we've got the space and time available at the moment. We're going to secure funding as much as we can, and we want to bring in 20 moms and their kids, the primary focus on the moms, to teach them martial arts. Obviously the primary aspect is that they're going to learn how to defend themselves. But the long-term sustainable aspect is that they'll be able to go back and start teaching them their own communities. Obviously under the Conversal's name, but we're giving them life skills to start their own businesses and be sustainable as well at the same time. And that's our goal, is, fight gender-based violence, but be sustainable about it. Because we watch so many fly-by-night things on, you follow McDojo, where they're teaching these crazy self-defense
Absolutely.
things. It's not sustainable. Often it's not realistic. Self-defense isn't a one-day thing. You should be working at it every day. And
There's so many courses out there. Come and do a 3-day self-defense course. So much is just sort of shoehorned into that. And, most teaching principles prove that within 24 hours of leaving that course, you probably only absorbed 30% of it. And the longer you don't practice it, the more it just disappears.
You need to develop muscle memory, and work on the neural cycles so that your body remembers what to do without even thinking. That's why you drill everything 100 million times, so that it becomes the natural instincts of what's happening.
And how often are these classes given at the moment?
At the moment, only once a week on the Saturdays. They come in with the moms and they bring their kids. The moms do striking and MMA classes, and then they come over to the jiu-jitsu side where I kind of take over. Coaches Alex, Timna run the striking side of things. And then, the goal is to eventually have them coming more often. It requires more funding, which obviously if anyone's out there and
absolutely
is willing to donate, that'd be great. But that's the goal. Yeah.
And where can people find out more if they are sort of keen to participate from a funding point of view? Where can they find out more?
Sure. They can contact us on quanvessels.co.za, our home website. You can email us, or you can email me on admin@quanvessels.co.za, or through any of our social media, Quanvessels or Cribinia Sunnyhill. All of the information's on there in various doses, and you can.
Very storied martial arts career, starting from judo as a youngster, right the way up to where you are now. What has the top 2 things that have stood out for you in your martial arts career that you physically witnessed here? I'm putting you on the spot, but this is fascinating. It's not often we get a chance to sit with and talk to someone that has literally seen some of the baddest guys face off in the EFC, some absolutely cracker fights. We spoke about EFC 42 just now, but what are some of the things that really still, you go to bed at night, smile on your face because you remember, I was part of that?
Look, the Dolce Vessels one was a big event. It was really great to be a part of that. But to be honest, the biggest things that making me smile is seeing a Don, seeing a JP, seeing a Dricus, a Dolce, Ruan Pot, whoever else, even the French guy, Cyril and Danny and them, going to the UFC, making that big jump, seeing that growth. Seeing BK in one, I'm very fortunate. I saw him from the first day he walked in. He was throwing everyone on the head because they had no idea who he was, and just seeing all of those guys' growth from here to there is what would put a smile on my face when I go to bed. If in context, any other big moments, there's many of these things, but you're gonna have to give me some time to think about it.
And just in terms of the plans that you've got, because obviously there's so much more learning that can take place, not only in martial arts, but within your jits career. What are some of the goals that you've set for yourself for the next couple of years?
I want to win World Masters in as many belt colors as possible. And I'll probably never stop competing, hopefully. So from now I'm purple belt, I missed the blue belt, obviously. Purple belt, I'd love to go this year. I think it's too soon with COVID and all of that. So maybe next year World Masters as a purple belt, and then again as a brown belt, and then eventually, hopefully one day in 50 years when I get a black belt, compete consistently like that where I can. And then that's my personal goals and ambitions, which generally compete as much as I can because I really enjoy it. But also looking towards the next generation, part of the program with the moms is teaching the kids how to compete, how to fight.
Yeah.
And putting them on podiums around the world, not just locally. Like, the goal has never been local, it's always world champions, to really show like how great we can be as a country and the elite coaching that we do actually have at this facility.
Well, there you've heard it. Lofty ambitions from Guy Lazarus, a guy that's literally been at it from a very, very young age. Judo right the way through now, purple belt jiu-jitsu. Absolutely fascinating to hear that it's not the end of the road for him, and just not the end of the road for you. If you've got those dreams, you've got those ambitions, you've just heard it right now. they can continue, no matter how old you are, no matter where you are. Hope you enjoyed the show today. Until next time, protect yourselves at all times. We're out.